Hello and welcome to the Next 100 Days podcast. My name is Graham Arrowsmith.
And my name's Kevin Appleby. So, Graham, we're back down under today,
We
all the
are
way to Sydney to talk to a plumber.
a plumber. Yeah, I don't know where you got that one from, Kevin. Are you on drugs? Seriously, we have got somebody who helps founders extract themselves with a view to exiting their businesses. It's a fascinating topic and one that is pretty on my mind, I have to say, over the next few years. And I'd love to learn more about it. But today, our guest is none other than Andrew Spark. Now, have I got that right? I mean, Spark as it with no E, no S, just Spark.
It's got an S on the end, so Sparks.
Sparks, okay, fine. Forgive me for that. You've got the traditional level of research that's gone on into this podcast, but so we're cocked up on your name. It's there on the screen as well. Anyway, right, Andrew.
Graham proves he can't read.
No, well, that's true. It's been a deficiency all my life, but you help people almost like get out of their own way in their businesses, such that you can actually lift the value of the company that they're trying to sell.
Correct. Yeah. In different sort of ways, shapes and formats. Some people want to sell their business for a life-changing amount of money, either today or in the future.
Yeah.
Other people just want a better quality of life, in the process. And myself, you guys are in the UK. I just spent 3 weeks in Europe. One of those weeks was in the UK and came back to a business in pretty healthy shape that, I was able to step out of, completely disconnect from, couldn't even log in to email or any of those channels because I decided that's what I wanted. And so that's kind of what we would call like a bit of a heyday, which is a lifestyle exit, where you can step away from the business and still play a key role in the business when you're there.
So, honest truth now. So the business dropped off like off a cliff then whilst you're away. Is that true?
No, it did not. We had a few new team members. We had 2 new team members come in a couple of weeks before, and one person was hired while I was away. The team and the structure's there. It hasn't always been this way. So, but I think if you fail long enough and point yourself in the right direction, or at least, for myself, I failed a long way and got a really big business in the beginning, and it was all based around me and my time and so forth. And I still play an active role in the company. I've got, work to do, but yeah, I could take a few weeks off with no problem.
Can I ask a question about the ages of the people that you tend to deal with? I mean,
yeah.
I'm some would say moving towards late 60s next month, and so basically one of the things about that is that I'm probably of the new generation that wants to exit, doesn't really want to exit their business, doesn't really want to sort of leave that alone. But I'm savvy enough to realize that there's some value here. It's just a question of how do I extract the most of it. Are typically your clients 60 plus, or do you find that people, as you kind of hinted at earlier, that there's a life-changing event, or they've just got to a point where they want to get out of the business and enjoy more time because they've got a baby or whatever it is? Are people at different ages, or do they tend to gravitate to 60 plus?
So I've been in this space for 15 years, and the trend has generally followed me in terms of age for 80% of the partners that we work with. And so I have a 4-year-old and 6-year-old daughters, and so it's generally people with families around the same age bracket. I'd say we do have some people in their late 20s. We do have some people in their 60s. Some probably even pushing towards the 70s. I think it's just the idea that if we look at the, younger generations, I guess the way that, the 20s and 30-year-olds these days, very different than, the era that we grew up in. And so they're doing things differently. And I think it just kind of puts it on the map that we have options. You may not want to sell your business today, but at some point in the future, you either close the doors and get nothing for it, or you build it into a saleable asset that's going to put a bit more money in the bank account. I tell the story of Dave, Dave was my boss when I was a plumber. And probably 5 years ago now, I saw on Facebook that Dave was posting, selling all his tools, and he had a plumbing company and successful, and he's in his probably early 50s. And I was like, Dave, are you like selling the business? And he's like, mate, can't sell me. And effectively he'd built the business around himself, and, the truck was branded in his name and the entire thing was him and his name. And so I thought that was like very telling. Businesses are going to finish at some point. And so you either close the doors like Dave did and, sold his tools for pennies for what they're actually worth, or you build it into an asset and can get a much better quality of life on the way as well.
So if you go back in time for Dave, and let's just say you go back, I don't know, 3 to 5 years with him, and you have a really great conversation with him, and you say, look, this is how, for your sake, we need to change. What would you have said to him?
I did say to him at that point, like, you're prepared to put a bit of time into it. Would you be open to, putting 6 to 12 months into it? And he said yes. It didn't really progress too much further than that. But I think that what would I have said to him, like the question that you ask, is it would just be around who are the potential people that could buy the business. So there's obviously strategic acquisition, where it could be a bolt-on for another company, or somebody could buy the database, or, other things like that. On the flip side of that, it could be somebody that wants a job. That market probably a bit tougher, especially because it was in his name. But that's where, if you went and did a rebrand and put a bit of time into it, you could build and establish that up, and he's still got 30 years of customers that, knew him from the local area. So that is probably a saleable asset, and then get some IP out of his head and some systems and stuff like that into the business. And that's something you could sell for a good amount of money, because, he would have been a quiet millionaire, not flashy, not big, not, doing those things, but they're most of the people that we work with. They're not out there flashing the money around there.
We all make it just about Dave though, Andrew, but I mean, but it's interesting, the story, because after even though you intervened, after a little while, maybe work just got in the way. There was something that just got in the way of him taking action.
I think
people stall, don't they?
Yeah, I think funnily enough, I was talking to my team about this about half an hour ago. We all have motivation, and there's towards motivation and there's away from, and people will do more to avoid pain of a situation than they will to run towards pleasure. And the idea, we're brought up strongly blue collar. My dad worked in a printing factory, had his own business until he was 50 and had some health problems. And so there was it wasn't like I'm going to go do this different thing. It was just, entrepreneurship and building a business is just kind of the next logical step for me, because I'd seen it that way. And so, I think if you kind of follow the bouncing ball on these things a bit, it can just be that's kind of the next thing in line for
it. I know how difficult it is to sort of pick up the sort of bits of advice. I mean, we've had 10, 11 years of brilliant people, not unlike yourself, Andrew, that have come on and shared their thoughts for the better part of an hour, and some of it really resonates, and you think, I wonder how I can integrate that into my business. Now, the danger is, of course, with a podcast like this, you get too many ideas.
Ideas, absolutely.
But that's been almost like a fault line for us. But having said that, it's business seems to get in the way, and it's like working in on versus on your business. And I think there's one of the things I find quite difficult is actually saying, no, this is the thing that I'm going to focus on, and because I can see the exit.
Yeah.
And just for anybody listening, you want to find the website that Andrew has. It's my and then EXYT. So it's a brilliant way of spelling exit. My exit, instead of the I, put Y in, .com. And so you'll find more there. And it is a brilliant website. So definitely go and check him out there. But it is a challenge, isn't it? You've got maybe what, 3, 5 years before you retire, in my case.
Yeah.
Or you want to sell the business in that sort of, 3 year period. There's a lot to do, isn't there?
3 years is a lot of time. So it is just the intent, right? It's like, how committed are you? It's what I was saying before of, people are more motivated away from pain. So, if you got sick, 2 years ago and you needed to provide for your family and that was one way to do it, you would do it. If you don't have motivations like that, or you don't know that that's an option, then you don't do it. And so, to your point before, saying that it's hard and people get carried away in the business, and you get carried away in the business because the structure's not right. And that's like the entire that's the entire reason we do what we do. Because when I can step out and go to Europe and, take other holidays and so forth at this stage, because the structure's right, the team's in place, the processes are in a good way. There's a way that we do business here that I can be away and they can recruit new team members into the team. Generally, I'm involved in hiring still, but in this case, I wasn't. So that can all happen while I'm on holidays, because the structure, the infrastructure, the team, the culture, the standards, all that stuff that happens through recruiting the right talent, giving them clarity on what they need to do. And so, you've got to earn your way there. You've got to earn the money to be able to, recruit the people. Some people obviously go and borrow money, but for myself, it's always been bootstrapped, and you earn the right to the next person and the next person. And then over time, you get people and they're okay for a phase and they get to a certain point and then they can't grow beyond that. And then so they either grow with you or you outgrow them. And then, you go find the next person. But these are the ways that you claw back your time and claw back your focus, right?
That's interesting.
I think the goal in the beginning when you start a business is to get busy. The goal once you get busy, in my opinion, is to have an empty calendar. Because when you have an empty calendar, you can then work on the business. I remember days when I was sitting in sales and sitting in the sales seat, and you look at the calendar, sometimes you're like, fuck, like the calendar is just not full. And then other time, and then you get it busy, you're like, yes, I got there. And then you complain that it's like so busy, but it's the thing that you wanted. But when you have team that you can, delegate that work back to, and they can make it their role, and it's their role to do that for the company, that's when the structure's right, and that's when your calendar frees up so that your time, I still work on the business. I have a small element that I work in the business. I probably work 3 or 4 hours a month in terms of delivery, but I work closely with my team and, investing into them and growing and developing them alongside the COO that I've got. And we have different but complementary skills. So that allows me to step into some of it, but not all of it. And that was the goal for me.
Wow. I mean, that's very impressive. I don't know about you, Kevin, but my wife and I are planning a cruise next year.
Yeah.
And, the nature of this business is that I've never really given myself permission to go away for more than about a week, and so, and I can live with that. And my preference has been recently to go for UK holidays because, whatever. And but we're definitely going to go, and it's nearer you than it was around the Japan area. So that's the plan.
Yeah.
So it's probably going to be June next year. So it's less than a year.
Yeah.
So between now and then, and that's going to be what better part of 3 weeks. Kevin, you blank me off the podcast calendar for that. But the beauty of that is that I've now got to think, how is this business going to thrive during that period? And I'm not necessarily in your avatar, in your the people that you're particularly looking for, but in my own right, I'm thinking now, how can I systematize so much of the business that I can get through that period? Is AI a function of that, or is it just going to be about people and systems?
Oh, I think at time of recording, so this will probably date, but I think at time of recording, AI has come and it's presented itself, and it's shown that there's opportunity, but at the same time, I think it can be a distraction for a lot of businesses because they take their eye off what was already working and they should have just put their head down and focused on it. And so yes, we use a lot of AI internally, but we use it to build infrastructure and so forth that we know how to build and to accelerate. And we have, I think we had, 17 on the team. I went through a restructure last year. I think we got back to 11. We're back to about 15 or so at the moment, from memory. I might have that right. But we're a much more efficient, much better business through the use of AI. But I would argue that most people at this stage, the time investment that has to go into learning it and so forth, people think you can just plug it in and away it goes, and it's not that at all. And in fact, a friend of mine, I don't know, his role is head, I think I'll say head of AI ANZ for Amazon. He's a good friend of mine, and he said he was at a conference, this is going back a few months, but productivity has dropped since AI has come in because you end up in the AI hole where, you start something and then you've got so much information, you've got to dig through the information and then find the relevant information and then carve it out. And so what started as a simple question at the top of a thread ends up in this, really big 3 weeks later, you're still talking about the same thing. So do I think AI has a place in business? Yes. Do we, talk to the partners that we work with at the right stage? Yes. I think it all comes back to the trajectory of where you are and what you're trying to do. I think for yourself, you could, get a clear plan, put some simple systems in place, delegate some work to some people that they can, keep the ball moving while you're away. That would do more than enough for 3 weeks. And I don't come back to a full inbox now either, but that is only structural. And I'd love to tell you that I'm selling this idea and selling the dream, but it's true. It was just my commitment. I grew a business early, and it was all my time, and have grown grew an 8-figure business early, and then a couple of 7-figure businesses since. And it was always my time. And then when I had my daughters, it became a big focus of like, hang on a minute, like there's got to be another way, a better way to do it. And so I think once you get that structure right and you've got plenty of lead time to be able to get 3 weeks out of your business, you've just got to, figure out where it's all at and who's doing what, and be able to step back.
Assuming that I'm well enough to buy a Christmas tree this year, I agree. I mean, you never know what happens in life, do you?
No.
Never know.
I would have thought, Graham, that 3 weeks is a good test period as you move forward. If I can move away from a business for 3 weeks, can I move away from the business for 4 weeks, for 6 weeks?
Yeah. For sure. Sorry, I don't want to.
I think he's trying to get rid of it.
I didn't really quite pick up on that. No, I mean, he couldn't possibly. You can't get rid of the talent now, can you? Let's face it. But no,
you hadn't noticed that you've been talking to an AI version of Graham since we started.
I wish. No. I guess up to a point, though, it's Kevin's right in a sense. 3 becomes 4, becomes before you know it, you are out of the business. And so, and I think if the business is still operating and still bringing in money, and it can run without you as a founder, whether I'm at your level or not, and I have plans to be at your level. So basically, the whole idea of it is to do that. And with new streams of business, what I'm sort of pointing over here somewhere, then basically I think I can do that. I think I can organize it so that it just happens through my relationships with other people and through staff. So from my point of view, I'd love to be able to get that because it's my retirement exit. I'm sure there's a neat little phrase that you can, exit, retire. No, I'm not quite sure. You've probably thought about it in your business,
Well, we call the lifestyle exit a heyday, and we call the commercial exit a payday. And fundamentally, that's what you're after. To get the best valuation for the business, you get a heyday anyway, because you're going to, the more your business doesn't need you, the higher the valuation that you can get. So to be able to get to a heyday or a place where you can step out of the business and come back and the business is in great shape, that's going to get the highest valuation.
Yeah.
Then it's just about, in most cases, and then it's just about who you're going to sell to. Strategic acquisition, somebody who wants, to come in and it's a job or roll it into something else. And so that is, and then us as a company, we sort of take it up to that transaction point where it's like, great, who's on the radar, what direction are you going, what are you trying to do? And then for the transaction, it's handed over beyond, some conversations that we'll have and some mentoring and so forth that I'll give people when they're selling in most of the cases, so that we can then help them get the highest valuation.
Andrew, you one of the things that you do is you're very specific. You have on your website, you'll see that there's a what some people call an eyebrow, a pre-headline, etc. And it's for founders, 2 million, presumably Australian dollars. It might not be 2 million to 20 million Australian dollars, or it could be just dollars. And teams of 10 to 50. So you've expressly said this is who I want.
Yeah.
So how, beyond putting that on your website, and before you go into the rest of your website, that's your statement of who I want as an ideal customer profile. So now,
correct.
How do you find those people out with of just putting that on your website?
We use paid ads, bit of organic, get on some podcasts from time to time. Most of the stuff that we do, I would say, is paid ads.
Yeah.
And that's been very successful for us for years. I think back in 2013 was probably when I spent the first dollar on paid ads on the internet, when it was a blue ocean that I didn't know that it was a blue ocean. I think
in different countries, Andrew, or is it just in Australia?
So it's been kind of all over the world. So at the moment, with Exit, we're focused Australia and New Zealand right now. North America and the UK, at some point, we'll have headcount. So we're just kind of really building the foundation here and getting some things dialed in as we start to look at, scaling some things over the next 12 months.
I mean, Kevin, I'm sure with Grow CFO, I mean, it's not strictly your business, but it is you're an integral part to it. At some stage, you and the people around you will be thinking, got this great business, we're all going to retire, or we're going to come out and take a little bit of money and then leave it to other people. Is that the plan for Grow CFO?
That's always been the plan for Grow CFO. Yeah. It's been built with that in mind, that the business is definitely not reliant on the founder. Every role in the business you could potentially move somebody else into.
Yeah, usually a monkey, I think that's the case, Kevin. It'd be a monkey, wouldn't it, in your case?
Well, yeah, in my case it was.
Every hour they come up with a word, but what can I say?
Well, that's it. I've been spending the last 3 years replacing myself with AI, so it could be a monkey.
Probably is.
But Andrew, if somebody's listening to this right now and they're thinking, yeah, this is the way to go, I'm trapped in this business, I've got to get out. I mean, we are the next 100 Days podcast. So 100 days, or even a shorter period, next couple of weeks, where do people actually start with this?
So let's say, for example, somebody's got how many people would be on a team of the types of companies that would watch or listen to this?
I think you'll find there'll be a few of your avatar, that's for sure. But not all, but by any means. There'll be others, probably more, slightly more, of the people like, solopreneurs and so forth, or small.
Yeah, so let's say somebody's got 10 on the team, for example, as a kind of smaller end of where we're at, but maybe a bit more helpful to the people that you have.
Yeah.
So I think, first of all, it's getting a plan of how do you want to exit? exit is our term. Is there a commercial exit that you're looking to do? Is there a just a lifestyle exit where you just want to, get a bit of life back while life is still around? Once you're kind of clear on what you're trying to achieve, then it's a game of resources, right? And so, who's on the team? Who's not on the team that should be on the team? Who's on the team that shouldn't be on the team? And then what sort of other commercial, what sort of capital is available to deploy or whatever. So let's say somebody's working 60 hours a week and they want to go to 30 hours a week in 100 days. Then what are the roles and the responsibilities and the KPIs of the people in the company? So we call it an ownership map. You would know as an org chart. An org chart for us is a people plan on a piece of paper. An ownership map for us is a map of ownership in each of the roles. So you've got your head counts there, but you've also got the key responsibilities. And those are, those key responsibilities are per person, right? Per person on the ownership map. What happens a lot is you give somebody a job description and then you end up doing their job because you never made it clear, or you never gave them the resources, or you never gave them the ownership over what they have to do and made it part of their KPIs or just part of their remit. And so just by doing that, like if you did nothing else but rolled that out and then had a clear meeting structure, maybe you meet with your heads of departments, or maybe the team's a bit smaller. So maybe you have 1 or 2 key team meetings per week and talk about this is where we are and this is where we're trying to get to. And then everyone sits down at the desk, and when they get up from the desk, every person knows what every person is doing because it's on the ownership map, and then they go and execute on it. That's the thing that'll take you from, 60 to 30 if that was...
So reading into that, Andrew, this is anybody can delegate work. It feels as though this is about delegating authority.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. If in the beginning, I'm sure many of us have had the same experience. In the beginning, you start something and you get that busy calendar that I talked about. And then the goal is to, hire somebody to do some tasks to take things off your plate. The problem is people wake up, 20 years later with a bunch of people around them that just do tasks. So then they sit there and wait. They wait for your approval. They wait for your sign off. They wait for you to put the next thing on their plate. And so you end up with this bloated business of everyone still sitting there. And I kind of draw this, image of a little person in a circle, and all the arrows are coming in because all your team is sitting there waiting for you. And you have built a prison. You cannot take a week, sometimes even a day off without things collapsing. Yeah. And so...
it's interesting you talk about your target as being businesses of around 10 or then more employees. Isn't there a case that if those businesses are less than 10, the founder is always sitting in the center and everybody works for the center? The difference when you go to more than 10 people is that you're at that place that you have head of.
Yeah, Kevin, I worked for a printer, the last corporate job before I started my own business. And it was run by one managing director, his business, and he was definitely in the center of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, he took time for physical exercise, etc. He'd come in a bit later, etc. So he was moving in that general direction. But I have to say, all the decisions ended up with him.
Yeah.
And I think, and his, I don't know, the head count would have been, 50 to 80, something like that. I can't remember exactly. Yeah. But it's a printer. So basically, there's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And he had to make the calls. And so I don't think I take your point. Smaller businesses, inevitably, the owner founder is going to be right in the center of things. But I don't know. How do you get out of your way then? And we've talked about this, and you've talked about systems and so forth. Andrew, but is there almost like a magic bullet that people are forgetting?
There's no magic bullets, unfortunately. The reason that we start with company, it's not always 2 million. If somebody's got 5 on the team, but they've got a good trajectory. Like for us, it's about product market fit. Does somebody have something in the market that's working actively and they have a team and they have the problems. So this is kind of how we separate ourselves from startup land, which is not us. We kind of call that the first stage, and then we focus on the second stage, which is what we call the second stage squeeze in the middle. And so that's where capital becomes a problem, and time, and all these different sorts of things. And so our job needs to be to, find those companies. So yes, the problems exist a bit lower, but we also have, I think the biggest company that we have, or the biggest company that we had last year was 80 million with 100 on the team, off the top of my head. And so these same problems can exist in businesses, like you're saying, that are doing $1 million, with 4 or 5 on the team. Yeah. We like to kind of pick them up after they've gone through that early phase because they've proven, product market fit. And then from there, we're able to decentralize. So I think it's a bit of a false belief that it just happens if you have 3, 4, 5 on the team. The pressure just becomes greater the more people that you have. And so the more people you have, the more lines of communication going in different directions. And so that's when either people go and make decisions and you start here and you end up over here, or everyone stops and sits and waits for, your printing founder to make decisions after he gets back from his run, and everything stops until then.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. The thing, though, it seems to me that, eventually did sell the business, but that I'd gone by then. But the thing is, one of the things about your business is that the founders themselves, when you first walk in the door, they have a mindset, don't they? It's been built up over maybe several years, 10 years, 15 years, who knows? And you wander in with an objective because they've somehow figured out that they need you. And you wander in, but it's in their head. How do you help with their mindset?
I think mindset is an interesting perspective. So mindset could be coaching lending towards therapy, and that is not what we do. No. Coaching is a bit of a dirty word around here. I understand, so let's talk about the other side of mindset, because I think that's kind of where we need to go, which is I have to think about things in a certain way to behave in a certain way. So let's go back to the printing boss and use that as an example. Let's say he was, let's say everyone turned up at 7 o'clock in the morning and machines were running 24/7. Let's say everyone started at 7 a.m. for the purpose of this. And then he was able to turn up at 9 o'clock in the morning. Well, what he was able to do is actually carve out 2 hours where he didn't need to be there. Yeah. And so if you can do it for 2 hours, why can't you do it for 10 hours? Mm-hmm. Right? And so the answer to that then becomes, well, because of this and because of this and because of this. Great. They're the constraints that we need to solve. And so, there's a 100-day podcast and there's a 100-day fix, and then there's the actual fix. I think the actual fix, the partners that we work with, a lot of times 12 to 15 months is a great opportunity, depending on their starting point and depending on what their goals and targets are, but 12 to 15 months of support. Getting the right infrastructure, peeling those things away, taking things off their plate, removing the constraints, and pushing decisions down, delegating, outsourcing, automations, AI, they become the thing that then, turn it into something that becomes a saleable asset.
On your website, this is, I hope, a summary of what you've just said. You have 4 sort of boxes, one which is strategic core.
Yep.
One which is SEAL team, interesting.
Yep.
One which is savage margins, that's interesting. Yep. And one is slick ops. Now, we've kind of sort of covered the first 2, strategic core and SEAL team. We're talking about authority delegation and all that. And slick ops has been a theme. Savage margins. Savage margins.
Sales, marketing, profit. Most people out there.
It's the word savage that's occupying my head. Why are margins savage?
Because it's very non-British. Why are margins savage? Because high profit businesses give you financial freedom, right? And so everyone will have had the experience. Most people, I would say, work with a lot of companies now. Most people, I would say, you start out and your prices are relatively low because you're picking up some work and you kind of begin there. And a lot of people get stuck there. And then when you get stuck there, let's say you were charging, 50 widgets an hour, for example, when you first started, but that was just you and you were profitable. And now you got 4 people there and you're making no money. And so a lot of people go, oh, hang on a minute, let's go back. And it's like, no, let's have a look at the commercial model of the business and see what the numbers would be and if it's commercially viable. And if it's not, are we going at the right market? Is there an opportunity here? Is there not? Most companies aren't that innovative. Like 95% of companies are just doing the same thing in a slightly different way, right? No matter, like for all the people out there thinking their business is different. And, you would see this, Kevin, in the CFO business, and we see this as well. And so most people think their business is different, and it's not. Like,
Spend an entire consulting career with clients telling me they're different, and none of them are.
Yeah. And so the product, like if you had 5, printing businesses or 5 accountants or 5 whatever, side by side, will they do things slightly differently? Yes. Will the systems and the processes and the execution be slightly differently? Yes. But I think most people think their business is different and it's not. And so that's why, the commercial model of the business, coming back to your question, Graham, is so important, because if you start out with low prices and you never increase them, then you're stuck and you're trapped because you can't afford to pay anybody else. So then sometimes you need to go in, increase the numbers. By the time you increase the numbers, then in a much better position, that's either going to give you more profit or more ability to go and pay more people to do more work for you, or both. And so then it's about having a full pipeline of people that are, going to pay the dollars that you're worth. So you might have to reposition your company in the marketplace. How do you go from charging 50 widgets an hour to 300 widgets an hour for the exact same thing? Who are the types of customers that you're talking to that are going to pay you the sort of money that, is going to make that commercially viable? And so that's where full pipeline of those people. So it's marketing and it's sales. And then it's dropping to the bottom line. And part of that is efficiency of team and operations. That'll all drop to the bottom line when you get that in the right spot.
I think an interesting question there, Andrew.
Yeah.
You talk about, can I spend, is it 50 an hour, or can I get that to 300 an hour? Well, to me, that's slightly the wrong question, because isn't it a shift between selling time to selling an outcome?
I think that depends on the business, on the industry. Obviously, there's things that are commoditized, right? And you can package it up in a certain way. But when we boil, so I do agree, and I would say you don't. How do I put this? So you would build a lot of financial models and so forth, right? And spend a lot of time in those. And so you have to put numbers in a cell on the spreadsheet.
Yeah, I would take issue with what you've just said as well, Kevin. I would say that you're selling an outcome even at 50 widgets, because as a salesman, I'm selling the value of that 50 widgets to somebody who's buying it. Yeah. I'm also selling the value of the 300 to somebody who's buying it, and they're going to be probably 2 different audiences. But if you can offer greater value that gives you the 300, then brilliant. And in some ways, that's why in my business, I've moved from kind of like the sort of data trading necessarily, which is the mainstay, but to AI solutions, etc., which is an increasing part of the business, and maybe 1 or 2 other things as well. So I'm kind of looking at a market expansion, whatever. And so that's my brain approaching this problem. But because at one level, there's a commoditization in data, and that's not where I want to be. Yeah. So from the get-go, I've always talked about my data as being high net worth, not low net worth.
Yeah.
And it's the same data, but one has a bigger margin attached to it. That's a small thing, but that gives you some idea of your own thought process about the products and prices that you're selling. And I'm selling an outcome for those people. But we could go on with you for the rest of your evening, and it is getting late in Sydney, Australia, and your stomach's obviously rumbling as there's this thing going on in the background. I don't know what's going on there, but no, I'm only kidding. And Andrew Sparks, you've been an absolutely top guest on the Next 100 Days podcast. Thanks for joining Kevin and I.
So, Graham, you asked an interesting question there about mindset. I think mindset isn't necessarily a problem here, because isn't there a moment when the penny drops that you are getting in your own way, and that's when you pick up the phone to Andrew?
Yeah,
You know, the mindset has already happened at the point he gets involved.
Yeah, maybe. But it's one thing knowing that you've got to exit your business. It's another thing knowing that you're going to take the actions that are going to get you there.
Yeah.
So I suppose I was hinted. Mindset's such a, and Andrew was right to point out the fact that there's a sort of woo-woo sort of side of that, which is not where he's at.
Oh no.
But I think the
coaching
more,
to me has got to be something very practical, like, hey, all the decisions are stopping at your desk at the moment. What are you going to do in the next week to make sure one or two of those decisions don't stop at your desk anymore?
I'm just thinking about, and actually you've met the individual, but basically the person that I referred to would have been probably quite prickly about the whole thing, and until his mind had sorted out.
And I think, Graham, that's only natural. You know?
You're
the founder. You put this business together. It's not you think of the company as yours. You think of the money in the company as yours. You think of the customers in the company as yours. So from all of that, the decisions will always come back to your desk. And it's a difficult dynamic to, you have a certain way of working as well, a certain way that things get done. And in a lot of small companies, there's the boss's way or the wrong way.
Yeah.
And those are all the things you've got to step away from. And you've got to put trust into other people. And I don't think it's necessarily a mind shift change. It's somebody like Andrew there telling you, stop doing that, do that. I think it's got to be a firm direction to make, and it might just be on a small scale to start off with, until the founder gets the idea that, oh yeah, it can work without me.
I suspect they don't necessarily take that approach, but it'll be something similar to that, in a sense that, you know, it's not so much stop doing this. I think, yes, there's naturally going to be this is what you're doing now. And this is the situation where once you've made some of these changes, almost like bridges to the future, then that's where you'll be. And you'll be freer, you'll have more time to yourself, you'll effectively be out of the business. Now, those bridges that they're literally building for them intellectually, but also practically with systems and pricing and all that kind of stuff, will take some time, and will take some thought process about the things that a company are doing. And, you know, I've mentally thought through some of this stuff for myself. I'm not saying that I'm brilliant at implementing it. It's just that I have a plan. It's maybe not necessarily the best plan. So I'm hoovering up ideas as we're going along, Kevin, to figure out, you know, within the time frame that I've got. And now I've given myself a much shorter time frame, because by the time this is released, it'll be how many? Something like 10 months before I go away on my 3-week.
I also think, Graham, there's another approach when you get to our age, and you might think, well, hang on, I don't want to retire. I just want to keep going. You haven't got this sale thing in 3 years' time necessarily, but you do want to get that freedom out of the business. You thought, well, somebody always promised me a retirement. No, I don't want to stop completely, but there's all this other stuff I want to do. I think there's a phase we didn't talk about today that says, actually, when you show up at work, what are the things that light your fire? And what's the stuff that is just plain trudge, trudge, trudge. Now, if you can work out what it is that makes you want to work, that makes you want to do stuff, makes you want to get out of bed in the morning, and you can manage to just focus your time on that, and somehow pass all the other admin crap away to somebody else, you're well on that journey.
Yeah, I think so. I think part of I don't think anybody if you've been used to trudge as you were saying for the last so many years, um, and then all of a sudden you realize that you've got to be the strategic overlord of the business in the time that you've created for yourself, a bit like Andrew, then there's quite a lot of upskilling or at least release skilling. I don't know if that's a word, but basically, in other words, you've almost got to allow that part of your brain to become a more considered strategic person for your business. You know, I've got the right team. Are they trained? Is the right pricing? I've got the right customers. What should I do in terms of this or that? That's much more what it seems Andrew's doing. And of course, on those at that kind of level, you can probably do with a 3 week holiday or whatever, because that's not necessarily tied to a week or a month.
Mm.
That's having it's almost like a longer perspective, because it's just naturally strategic is more longer term, and the sort of tactical things he's leaving his team to get on with. So
Yeah,
I think there's so much to this, and over time, inevitably, Kevin, we're probably going to have other people on, because I think people are going to say, hey, these two people are getting close to their respective business exits and retirement. Maybe we should put ourselves up for as a guest. And if you're listening to this and you think you can contribute to the debate, then do get in touch with us, because we'd love to have you on the next 100 Days podcast. But today
yeah,
it's been a pretty interesting podcast, Kevin.
it has, and to an interesting area I find fascinating.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
On that, well, Kevin finding it fascinating, that's a bombshell. Today I've been Graham Arrowsmith.
And I've been the fascinated Kevin Appleby. Goodbye.
Goodbye.